Welcome to the Love Your Life and Yourself podcast, the weekly show where science meets soul and mom chaos meets mind mastery. You're not just a mom. You're a woman with dreams, a career, a body that needs care, and a soul that craves more. This podcast is your permission slip to stop surviving and start thriving in motherhood, health, career, and stress resilience. I'm your host, Dr. Ashley Rath, and every week we bring you actionable insights and transformative conversations to help you create a life you truly love. From evidence-based wellness strategies to authentic self-discovery, we'll explore what it takes to thrive through expert interviews and real unfiltered stories. Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to Love Your Life and Yourself podcast. I have an amazing guest with me, Lori Finlay. She is an adult nurse practitioner, a board-certified health coach known for her integrative and science-driven approach to women's health and wellness. And over the last 2 decades, she's gained clinical experience and a national reputation as a speaker and educator. Lori specializes in empowering women to achieve vitality through functional medicine, lifestyle changes, and evidence-based nutrition. She is the CEO of Women Wisdom and Wellness and frequently consults and coaches clients seeking holistic solutions for chronic health issues and preventative care. Her work is deeply informed by her background in conventional medicine and her extensive study of functional and nutritional medicine. And I just want to add to that personally, you have quite the personal story, which we're going to go through as well, of how you got to where you are today. But welcome, Lori. It is so great to have you as a guest.
I'm really thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So I always just like to start with uh, people's story and how they got to where they are. And so tell me, what's your story? Where you come from? What's your background? And what does that journey look like for you?
Well, I'll start way back. At the age of 10, I knew that I wanted to be a cardiologist. I read the first
Interesting.
book about Christian Bernard and the first heart transplant in South Africa. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a cardiologist. And I started working in medical centers at the age of 14. And by the time I was 18, though, right, working in medical centers and stuff, I started doing the math and went, by the time I'm 32, I might have my first job if all goes well with all that training. And if I'd like to be a mother and work part-time, that doesn't make sense. So I switched and chose nursing. Well, as life turns out, I had infertility and anyway, long story short, I was able to really, really thrilled participate in and care for the first heart transplant in the state of Utah, in Salt Lake City, and that was really awesome. So I worked in cardiology and cardiothoracic surgery and, all of that, heart failure, women and heart disease for years and years and years, and traveling all over the country lecturing and teaching, and my dad dropped dead very suddenly of a massive heart attack when I was
Oh,
5, and it was shattering, right? Devastating, and at that time, I had a conversation with God, like, I can't do this anymore. The system is broken. I mean, I was working and seeing as a cardiology nurse practitioner and seeing my patients come back every 6 months for another roto-rooter procedure, as I call them, right? Just like, this isn't working. Like, you're just doing this over and over again. And I had a conversation with God, like, I can't do this anymore. And I want to spend the rest of my life teaching people how to be well, right? And 5 years later, I was married and moving off to, Atlanta, and, um, and then I got really sick within a couple years, and I had no idea what was going on, and Western medicine didn't either, and they were very, very, disrespectful and dismissing and patronizing and even gaslighting. I had a physician actually, this was a colleague that I'd worked with professionally, tap me on the knee, put his hand on my knee and said, "How much time do you spend researching your illness on the internet?" I was just like, wow, if I'm being treated like this, what are all my girlfriends being treated like? Like, I can speak the lingo. I know what I'm talking about. I know physiology and pathophysiology. I know my body, what's going on here. And that's when I really realized, like, I needed to dig in and understand biochemistry and start understanding getting certified in hormones. And that's when it
Cool.
hit, bless you,
Thank you.
right? Um, Heal my body and start learning about healing because I wasn't taught any of this in Western medicine. I wasn't taught anything. I mean, I hated biochemistry. It was all biochemistry. I hated technology because it was all biochemistry. But he was like, I need to understand this. So now I geek out on Dutch hormone tests and DNA testing and see how we can heal the body, right? Because Western medicine is really, really broken. You know that. That's why you do what you do. And so, my passion now is really teaching people and usually women, and they can then teach the men they love. And I'll have women say, "Would you please take care of my husband?" But really and reinforcing and teaching and supporting and inspiring people to know that no, you can heal your body. Healing happens at home, not with your medical provider. And honor your intuition, listen to your body. And if your provider isn't listening and doing what you need, then go find another one and
Mm.
get educated. So my passion is educating people to know this is what's going on with my body and my hormones. Let's connect the dots emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, to actually get you healthy.
Wow.
Long answer.
I love that though, because I think when people hear stories, it's not like you're coming from a place of, like anger or frustration, or maybe there was some anger and frustration in there, which, had you changed. But I love when people share their stories because it gives them a reason of like, oh, well, that makes sense why you're seeking something else other than, traditional healthcare. And there's a time and a place for traditional healthcare, but I think especially in our worlds of working with women, especially with female hormones, there's such a gap. Such a gap. And can you share more a little bit about your experience with chronic fatigue? And then I know you publicly announce or share your story of premature ovarian failure, um, and how that shaped your passion for endocrinology and hormone health, which you're in now.
Wow. Yes. I mean, it certainly did, right? Um, no one could really understand what was going on. I mean, they literally had to put me on a bioidentical form of cortisol called Cortef because my adrenals were so sick. My birth,
Mm.
my birth mother died at the age of 25 when I was 2 years old. And all I knew is that she had hepatitis. Well, the older I got, right, it was like, okay, wait a minute. My health crashed at 42, my sister at 41, like what's going on here, right? And so
Mhm.
and studying and looking at all of that gradually. But I mean, I was desperate. 2 hours of sleep for 2 hours of productivity, and then 2 hours of sleep, and was really a mess. Hormones were flatline, adrenals were flatline, and this went on for quite some time. I finally found a really great chiropractor who specialized in kinesiology and functional medicine, and we started doing, heavy metal testing and things. It's amazing I wasn't glowing like neon, right? Like makes it really, really toxic because as it turns out, like it wasn't until when I was 50, so like 8 years later, I finally tested my DNA to finally connect the dots and go, thought so. I thought it was that glutathione gene, right? And lo and behold, I'm completely missing it. It's called null, not there, broken wire, like no glutathione, right? And so no wonder I was so sick. I couldn't detox, right?
Mm.
And then I
Mhm.
got Epstein Barr, but it took another 15, it took 15 years from start until someone finally tested me for mold. And I had 150 times normal levels of black mold in my body. Like, that causes mitochondrial dysfunction, and for years, that means, like, yeah, your energy is in the tank. Your cells can't function properly, and so, with this underlying thing that I couldn't get healthy. I would experience a little bit of energy, and then, it would come back to this baseline of, "Ooh, I do not feel good." So it was a long time and a lot of work, and want to reinforce to my clients who might complain of, oh, I've got to take this supplement, excuse me, and that supplement, and this tastes terrible. I'm like, I've been through it all. I've been through it all. I hear you. I get you. I'm doing a parasite cleanse right now. Like, let me tell you, like, what tastes yucky, right? I get it. So I really, really, really get like
Yeah.
the patience and the honoring, of yourself and loving yourself and what we need to do to really heal. And I also really get the impact of our relationships. I write about codependency. I didn't go into lots of detail, but I write about a little of, when you've got PTSD in there as well, and all of these things going on, to really get awesome vitality, right? We do need to address our health emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually, because it's all intertwined. We see the ologies in medicine, psychology, psychiatry, gynecology, gastroenterology, all these ologists, and it's all broken up, and we are whole human beings, and it's all integrated. And I've seen profound healing for myself and my clients when we start dealing with the emotional things, right? The mental and emotional and spiritual things, because often they actually can say, well, actually I'm in this terrible relationship, and I think that may be causing my health.
Hmm. There's a lot to unpack there. I am writing notes because I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so many follow-up questions to that. So a lot of our listeners are new to functional medicine. And when you were talking, it made sense to me. However, I think I'd love a little more breakdown. You said your hormones were flatline, your cortisol was flatline. We know that cortisol should spike in the morning and kind of ski slope down for the remaining of the day. And we have labs now to be able to test that throughout the day. And you also had mentioned that you did some DNA testing to test for uh, the genetic makeup that may help or inhibit you from detoxing. I'm guessing in your liver or kidneys because those are our detox organs. And then the glutathione. So walk us through. I know that was a lot of different points there, but for listeners new to functional medicine, like how do you take what you just say and how is this different from traditional medicine? Because most people are like, well, I go to my doctor, I get labs and they say they're normal, but I don't feel normal. Right.
Such a great point, right? Thing I love about functional medicine is that, well, again, we're getting to the root cause. When you think about, I use a schematic representation of a tree. At the leaves, at the top of the tree, I say, these are the all the ologists. Will you go to this one and you go to that one, and then we'll refer you to this one, we'll refer you to that one, and this doctor, this ologist may not be talking to that ologist, right? They're like diagnosing. We've been trained how to diagnose. I was trained, right, as a nurse practitioner. Here's how you diagnose. Here's the prescription. Here's the treatment protocol. If it's yes, you go up this algorithm. If it's no, you go down that algorithm, and that's it. And then you come up with your treatment plan and prescribe. You're ruling in, you're ruling out. In other words, is it this problem? Nope. Let's do a test, and we ruled that one out. So let's go farther down this algorithm or this road. And that's great for chronic for an acute illness, really great for an acute illness. However, oftentimes as we go farther down the trunk of the tree, it may be, is there an electrolyte imbalance? Is there, or a pH problem, or is there a hormonal deficiency, or are there neurotransmitter issues? Right? What's going on with the gut? As you go farther down the base and the root of the tree, it's like, what about adverse child events? And what is this doing to your physiology and your nervous system and your adrenals, right? Or what about, a toxic relationship you might be in? Or what about the indoor air quality that you have, right? My home in Atlanta was loaded with mold. In the room that I was using for detoxification, where my infrared sauna was to detox the heavy metals, I was getting poisoned by mold,
Huh.
right? Like who knew, right? I couldn't smell it. And, anyway, there's all of those things that we need to take into account. Um, when it comes to health and wellness. I didn't know any of those things. I wasn't trained in any of those things. And so I needed to learn that and understand, oh, here's how all of this is connected. And and I love the genetic testing. It does make a huge difference. When I see a client, we look at and you do this as well. You listen to their history and you can do a physical, right? So you can get the subjective data, as we call it in medicine. Here's my symptoms and my history. And then we get the objective data. You can do a physical, and you can do lab data. You can do an X-ray or a CT scan, or in this case, a Dutch test or a DNA test, and get the lab data. But in functional medicine, even though it might say these labs are within normal limits, I want to know how you're feeling because
Mhm.
the blood levels or the urine levels might be within normal limits or even optimal. But if symptomatically you're not feeling well, what's going on at the receptor site? What is
Yeah.
blocking your receptor site and your communication at the receptor site so your tissues are still not absorbing the nutrition or still not absorbing the hormones to relieve the symptoms? And in Western medicine, sometimes your levels could be at the 5% mark. You're like, "Within normal limits." Well, feel terrible. I would feel better if it was in the 50th percentile or the 75th percentile, right?
Mhm.
Do you feel, functionally? And that's where I love functional medicine. How are you functioning? And how are you feeling symptomatically? Something's not working. The body communicates, right? The brain communicates with the hormones, communicate messenger molecules to the rest of the body, and it's like a cell phone. If you've only got, one bar, communicating, the blood levels might be fine, but if it's 1 bar at the receptor site, you're gonna feel terrible. So we need to get the receptor site.
Mhm. I think that's so huge on a couple levels because that's probably the most common thing I see in my practice is women who, one, are emotionally and psychologically just dismissed in the office. But then two, the doctors that do run labs, they come back and they're like, well, they're normal. So I don't have any other things that I can do for you. And I think that's massive. When a person doesn't feel good, I think that's something that we've lost as women is truly listening to our intuition and understanding like, hey, if we just quiet our brain a little bit, we know, our intuition knows, especially moms, I think we get this with our children. We're like, gosh, there's something just not right. Like I need to keep digging or I need to follow up or I need to do something for my child. But sometimes in the craziness, we don't always listen to our bodies, yet it's given us warning systems and waving its flags all the time. So I think that's really important to just distinguish like if your intuition is telling you, "Hey, there's something going on," listen to that because it it's a powerful sign, and you should feel great. Like, you should have energy and vitality, throughout your life, and if you're not, I think there's always something more root cause-ish. So, I have an answer for this question, but I'm curious if we match up. What are some of the most common root causes you see in women's health issues? And how do you help those clients uncover or address them?
Right. I think number 1 that I see is stress. Their adrenals are a mess.
Mhm.
You're incredibly stressed. That,
Mhm.
sucks the progesterone right out of you. Like, the medical term is called pregnenolone steal. So they're stealing the progesterone. The stress is stealing the progesterone right out of you, which now causes a shift in your hormone balance. You've got too much estrogen compared to progesterone, and they're a mess emotionally, mentally, and physically, right? A mess. They've got, like, they're cranky and/or witchy. They can't sleep. They're putting on weight. Their libido's in the tank. They're putting on, um, they can't think. They've got horrible brain fog. Their hair is falling out. Their nails are breaking. I mean, all of these things are going on because I think like that very first root of stress, whether it's physical stress. I've seen women that have been, just exercising too much
Mm, mhm.
too much out of their bodies, right? Maybe not emotional stress, but demanding too much out of their bodies that are shifting themselves. We don't realize, and it wasn't until I did a lot of work, 12 years studying with the Understand Men Company and certifying with them and Ellison Armstrong to really get the significant difference between men and women. Men have at least 16 times more testosterone than we do, at least, to produce results every day. And we're typically out there, particularly if we have a career, trying to do, compete with and do things and produce results that our male counterparts do with that much more, testosterone. We
Mhm.
we have to rely on our adrenals, and they're pumping out this testosterone to give them all this energy to work for long periods, long, long hours. If you think about our caveman days, they might have to travel and go for 36 or 48 hours to kill that beast,
Right.
right? That's not our physiology, but we keep demanding that out of ourselves. And that is what I think is one of the big drivers of women's health issues.
I could not agree more. We do labs within our office too, and the number one thing, regardless of what their estrogen, progesterone, or testosterone levels are, is is your cortisol in a rhythm that is healthy and functioning? And if it's not, that's going to downstream affect progesterone, like you said. It's also going to affect testosterone and estrogen, and I think that is so missed even in the functional health world of let's just go straight to HRT. Let's just give some more estrogen or progesterone. And it's like, yes, that will help with some symptoms, but like, what's the underlying, why is that low or high in the first place? And I think regulating that stress response and getting the system out of such a fear, anxiety, stress state, whatever that is, and into that safe, parasympathetic healing, growing, restorative state where that's where true healing starts. That's where true healing needs to begin because otherwise we can keep even just treating just like Western medicine and it's still not getting to the root cause of how do we increase our stress resilience and how do we start to regulate our nervous system? So
Right.
I am so glad you said that. I had a feeling that we would align in that. But
Right.
yes, yes, I love it. Okay. Um, you mentioned within you have a couple different programs. You do some coaching and digital things as well. Tell us tell us a little bit about those and maybe share with whether it's a woman um, or a case study of something that you see often. Like, paint me a picture of what that looks like, and then what that like kind of the storyline of how they get well.
Okay. I'll start with just saying that yes, I see sometimes women that have already been diagnosed and been through the horrible experience of chemo and radiation. One client, she'd been through chemo and radiation, the radical mastectomy, right?
Mm.
Then a couple years later, had ovarian cancer and went through all of it all over again, right? And she finally came to see me. Like I'd been offering, but finally came to see me. And we did a Dutch test. And you can imagine that her hormone metabolism was extremely poor, right? Really poor. It's like no one addressed this. No one even looked at this. No one has been helping her detox these estrogens out of her body. And instead, they just basically tell women that because you've had cancer, you can't have hormones, and they put them in, just immediately send them into menopause when the research is incredibly clear that when our hormones plummet is when we have the inverse ratio and a spike in breast disease, heart disease, brain disease, i.e., dementia, Alzheimer's, and bone disease. So, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, dementia, heart disease, strokes, and breast cancers, right? When our hormones plummet. And so, um, the Western medicine approach of you can't have hormones is crazy to me. But I do see those kind of clients that come and have already been through the horrors the worst parts of medicine and had to deal with all of that and are now trying to put their bodies back together. And I will help and coach them and offer, nutritional programs and things to support them. Often I will see clients, right? That some might be in there. I had one young gal that was experiencing off the top anxiety and depression and infertility. And of course, Western medicine had put her on anxiolytics and antidepressants, 3 and 4 and 5 medications, right? And she's still not feeling good, and she's got yeah, and she can't, conceive as well. Well, guess what? She had hormonal imbalance, significant estrogen dominance, right? Her hormones were way out of balance, and, all kinds of toxins in her body. Her receptor sites couldn't function properly. She was stressed out of her mind trying to get pregnant, and produce that result in and of itself can inhibit the procreative process. And so I had to work with her and coach her. I mean, got the objective data, right? And said, this is what we see. This is what's going on in your body. Let's now start addressing those things and giving her the right nutrition and helping her see the impact of stress. And as she improved her hormones and detoxed her body and improved the function at the cellular level, within a year, she was um, off her anxiolytics and pregnant, right? Another client, she was in her early 40s. um, I was really worried about her. I knew her professionally, and I could see that she was working at Mach 1 speeds. Mom with 4 kids and just producing amazing results, but I'm like, "Oof," I knew enough about cortisol and hormones, like, "Ooh, I'm kinda concerned here." And then suddenly her mother died, like, bam,
Oh,
right? Like,
ugh.
"Ooh." And I finally, suggested, like, "I'd really love to do a Dutch test for you, and let's take a look and see what's going on with your health." And her adrenal glands, you can imagine, were a mess. And she was on, anxiolytics and antidepressants and Ozempic, right? I mean, that's what Western medicine did. Well, you
Mhm.
can't lose weight. Well, let's just put you on Ozempic, right? And nothing was working. So we looked at her, we did a Dutch test and got good data and could see that her adrenal glands were a mess. Yes, her hormonal metabolism needed help. She needed to detox and improve her diet. Like that was all, things that we worked on in nutritional supplementation and suggestions of timing of her carbohydrates during the day to support her cortisol and adrenal function versus stress them, right? And, anyway, we did all of that, supported her adrenals, and I said, and my recommendation, she's a Peloton, gal like I am, but I said, my recommendation is that you cut that down to at least 3 weeks, 3 days a week. Like, none of this 5, 6 days a week going really, really hard. So I had her cut her exercise at least in half, change her diet, and in 6 months, she was off her anxiolytics and her anxiety meds for our listeners, right? Her anxiety meds, her antidepressants, and had lost 60 pounds off the Ozempic
Wow.
because she healed her body, right? And she took off some of the stress. And yeah, she started to see a therapist to help her with the grief, right? The grief was a huge component that she had to handle and start loving her body and slowing down and thinking like, this is what I've just been through. I think I need to take time for self-care, right?
How
And
important sorry,
yeah,
go How important do you think, mindset and mental emotional health is in the healing processes? And do you have any strategies that you use to help your clients, shift those?
yeah, I mean, first of all, it comes back to the things that I've learned from because I wasn't taught this in nursing school or in graduate school, graduate degrees, so wasn't taught this. Um, the power of our thoughts. I love the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, right? His book
Mhm.
in his book,
Leaf of
Biology,
biology.
Biology Belief, right?
Oh,
And I got to hear him live in Atlanta for 90 minutes, and it was so profound. And I just remember him clearly saying that, look, our thoughts, our thoughts change the biochemistry of our blood. which,
Say that louder for the people in the back.
right? Say that loud. Our thoughts change the biochemistry of our blood, which then changes the function of our cells and tells our body what to do and what not to do. And it can
Mhm.
change the expression of our DNA. So it's like if we are locked in hatred and resentment and grief, and resonating down at this lower level of emotions, that is going to have an impact on our biology. If we're constantly thinking, I'm sick, I feel horrible, my body, my body doesn't work, I have all of these problems, then our body is going to resonate there and it will tell our body what to do. I remember reading Mind Over Medicine by Lisa Rankin years ago. Lissa, Lisa Rankin. And she's a physician. She was a very, very active physician, and then her health crashed. And she was like, okay, I need a break. And she started studying more of this, right? And studying the power of our thoughts and hearing from people all over the world, right? And she talked about the placebo effect. We know we've all heard of the placebo effect. Oh, if you take a sugar pill, your headache's going to go away, right?
Mhm.
And all of Western medicine and big pharma, are trying to control and manage that placebo effect. When it's like, why don't we study that and understand that really? And then there's what's called the nocebo effect, that if someone gives us an impression or someone tells us this is what our body is going to do, then we believe it and our body will start behaving that way. And I've seen that myself. I write about this in my book, stories of patients that I have seen that were literally knocking on death's door, and there's no reason physiologically that they should have survived. None. I came back to the critical care unit on Monday, like Friday afternoon, like this man is going to die. This young man is going to die. He had horrific adult respiratory distress syndrome. He could not breathe. He was suffocating. And he told his little wife, like, let me go, write on a piece of paper, because he was on such high ventilation, we could not oxygenate him. And he saw his little girls. I brought them in. I broke all the rules and brought the little girls into his bedside. And he hugged them. And we put pictures of his family right in front of him on his ventilator. And within 24 hours, that man was off the ventilator and out to the regular floor. When I came in Monday morning and the room was empty and he wasn't there, I'd assumed he died. The power of his thoughts and the will for him to be alive and save his and raise his daughters, his body, he was able to heal his body. We couldn't do anything medically. And I've seen that play out. I've seen, dear friends, best friends told you've got 3 weeks to live. And they died in 3 weeks, like to the day. Like the power of our thoughts are amazing. And so when I had two breast lumps years ago, right? Yeah, my initial response was freak out, right? Like, oh my gosh. But I had long since stopped doing mammograms because I knew the dangers of mammograms and was doing thermography. And it was like, Lori, you've been studying this. Take a deep breath. If it is cancerous, if it's malignant, it's been growing for 8 to 10 years. You don't have to rush to do anything. Stop, calm yourself down, and get some data. And so I did some lab tests and I got an MRI. And yes, there were two lumps there. But, again, instead of doing a biopsy, let me get some tests. There are special tests out there that let you know, is it malignant or benign, a blood test. And I did that. It was like, calm down. Now start doing the emotional and nutritional work and detoxing work that you need to do. I started doing qigong, right? And literally like working on releasing the toxic, bent up or pent up emotions around my heart chakra, the breast area. I started visualizing every day that the and meditating, visualizing those lumps completely melting. Like I visualized that I had a blow dryer melting those lumps, right? I visualized my vitality 3 years and 8 years and 10 years down the road. The power of our thoughts are tremendous. And again, I come back to, there's the work of drawn a blank, but it's in my book and some great charts. When you look at the resonance and the frequency, the megahertz, this is where dis-ease starts. And dis-ease starts where we are hanging out in these emotions of resentment and anger and bitterness and rage and, lack of forgiveness. Whereas if we're resonating up here in love and peace and harmony, like it's completely different. Even if you have to start with essential oils, with rose essential oil that has the highest frequency that we can imagine, and put that on our body and start changing the frequency of our body and meditating and getting out in nature and writing it, doing a gratitude journal. I mean, when I started my gratitude journal, it was three bullet points. Like that's all I had was that energy and that time to do 3 bullet points. As I started training my brain and creating those and carving those new neural pathways, I could start seeing everywhere all day, and writing paragraph after paragraph of the things that I was grateful for in the middle of the most toxic, abusive divorce. I could first thing in the morning start seeing all these things I was grateful for. And that's one of the reasons I was so committed to that, because I also knew that women that go through breast cancer, or excuse me, women that go through divorce, they have a 2 to 3 fold increased rate of breast cancer and occurrence often within a couple years.
Wow.
Yes.
That
Huge.
is quite the stat. Like,
Yeah.
that
And I
is
was like, we need to
incredible.
take care of our bodies during, that's the impact of our relationships and stress. Right. And again, I would say it comes back to that whole hormonal piece of the stress and the pregnenolone steal, cortisol ramping up, stealing your progesterone, getting out of balance, impacting your hormonal metabolism even more. Yeah, it's amazing.
That is. And as a health coach or a creation coach, um, bringing this another dimension of spirituality, um, I think is so massive. I know people always say mental emotional, but you're talking at a whole nother level when you talk about frequencies and, how that emotion creates this a higher essentially vibration. And we know we're light. Like when you break down, which is kind of leading me into your next question of epigenetics. And so for the people that don't know what epigenetics is, and this another level of essentially control that we have over our health. Like, yes, we have our genetics and we can't change our genetics, but these tiny little methyl groups on our DNA, they have a lot of power. So, what's this next level of epigenetics that you talk about within your practice?
Again, when I read Bruce Lipton and the lights went on, it was like, wow, like so. I mean, as a teenager, I mean, literally early teens, could see that my grandfathers had aneurysms and strokes and heart attacks and all of this. Was like, I better take care of my heart health and have a much better, a healthier diet. So I was doing that really early on. And way before I got into cardiology, like was just kind of like, well, this makes sense. Anyway, um, once I started studying epigenetics, it was intriguing to me. And then I did my DNA, right? And my DNA test and confirmed, oh, I'm completely missing this gene. But what other genes aren't working? They call it in the world of genetics a SNP, like scissors, snipping something,
Hmm.
SP. And it stands for single nucleotide polymorphism. That's the big long name, but you might hear SNP somewhere. But it means you've got an alteration or an aberration or an abnormality. Well, there's hundreds of thousands of them, and it's not anything wrong with you. It's just like this is how your genes are wired. I like to express it because I'm a musician. I like to use the analogy of a grand piano. You could walk in and see this piano on the stage, a big frame. We know that there's wires and there's a keyboard and there's pedals. Those wires, are connected to the keyboard. You press the keyboards and there anyway, that's the basic structure of a piano. We don't know how the piano is going to express itself. What will come out of the piano? Bach or Beethoven, Beyonce or Billy Joel, right? We don't know. Um, it all depends upon the external influence of the pianist, right? the piano sits down and she will start playing, and that will express the piano. So when I bring that back to genes, it's like we've got the wiring. This is your wiring, that is your wiring. But what are you doing from an external influence that is impacting the expression, right? So I love the book of Dr. Um, Oh, just drew a blank. It's called Dirty Genes. Ben Lynch, right? He's here
Mm.
in the United States, wrote a book called Dirty Genes. And his point is that we can have healthy genes, healthy wiring, healthy genetic background, you know, but we can dirty them with our diet and lifestyle. We can downregulate the good and upregulate the bad. Vice versa. You can have bad genes or dirty genes that aren't functioning well, that you might have instead of, you're blessed with two from mom and dad, then you might just have one. And so it's functioning suboptimally. Or, um, yeah, anyway, suboptimally, you could say you've got a snip because it's not as great there. So what can you do? So for me, in the case of um, gluten, right? I don't h I'm missing one. I'm missing one, so I don't have, you know, what's the gluten allergy? Anyway, I'm careful with gluten, right? I'm really careful with gluten.
Celiac?
Celiac, thank you. I don't have celiac, but I do have to be careful because it does impact me and can cause inflammation. When it comes to the glutathione genes, which is the longevity molecule, the gift from God for every cell in our body, the master anti-inflammatory, master immune booster, master cell detoxifier, and master antioxidant. It's not even there. No wonder I was getting sick, right?
Mm.
And so I've learned what to do to support the glutathione pathways, how to support that in my body with the right nutritionals and the right diet. And I take a detoxing protocol very seriously. I've got my own infrared sauna to detox regularly. I take detoxing supplements, right? And I avoid foods, and I'm very fussy about my indoor air quality and the air filters and all those kind of things. So, from an epigenetic standpoint, I've now been able to upregulate and support even like my tissues. For instance, a couple years ago, I had to go have sinus surgery after this long, long, procedures of healing the black mold. I still had mold growing in my sinuses.
Hmm.
So, like the North American expert in Atlanta, 2 years ago, and had my sinuses all cleaned out. And this is a 76-year-old. He's been around and he specializes in mold. And he said to me the next day, postoperatively, I have never in my entire career seen anyone with tissues as healthy as yours.
Hmm.
Now, that's coming from someone that has had horrific health problems and no glutathione support, right? But because of what I've done with my diet and supplementation, I've been able to heal my body. My biological age, they call it phenotypic age, is now 9 years younger than than my chronological age. I had osteopenia in my early 40s. Now, because of what I've done with my health, I'm in the 98th percentile. And from chronic fatigue to my VO2 max, that means my cardiovascular health and stamina is now superior for a 60-year-old, excellent for a 40-year-old, and good for a 30-year-old. That is the power of epigenetics. And I've seen clients do this too, right? Like, okay, this is my family history, right? I've got all this diabetic history and all this obesity in my family. But once you start understanding what's going on epigenetically, you can start making different choices that completely downregulate the bad and upregulate the good.
Hmm.
That's
That's powerful.
the incredible power of epigenetics, right? And
It
that's
really is.
of biohacking. It's like, what are the things that I can do, right,
Yeah.
that actually make my genes function better,
Mhm.
right?
And it gives you the power and not necessarily, "Oh, I was just born with this," or "My mom had it," or "My dad had it." It's like, no, you are now the driver of the bus, and you have the power to turn on. Yes, we can't change your genes, but we can very much turn on and off the good and the bad
Right.
if we want by our
Yes.
lifestyle. So uh, I think that is the most powerful, you know, modern day mindset you can have is, oh my gosh, I do have control over this. So,
And I have, it's interesting. I've had people say, I don't want a DNA test. I don't want to know. And I've had, well, tell me, I want to know.
yeah.
Right. The MD Anderson Cancer Center said this was, gosh, 10, 15 years ago at least, that only 5 to 10% of chronic disease is caused by genes. And some
Mm,
people might think that's really bad news, like, ooh, really confronting news. And it's also like front of the hand, back of the hand. That's the good news. We have
yeah.
that much control.
Hmm. Yes. That's actually even higher than the latest I've read. So that's even better because I was reading around 80%. So that's that's awesome. That's
Right.
great.
That's great.
So 40 years of nursing, 18 years in functional med.
Right.
What's the next frontier for you? What are you working on?
Well, I am working on getting that message out, right? I've written,
Mm.
I'm thrilled it was an award winner and best selling. Um,
Yeah, tell us more about that.
Well, I was thrilled that it got bestseller in 2 categories, health and wellness and aging or something like that. Um, but I also my team recommended that I submit an application to the Indie Book Awards, which is the largest book award or competition for private publishers, individual, publishers. And, so I got notified sometime in April that I, was a finalist in the health and wellness category for my book. There were 42 countries and 5,000 entries. So I was
Wow.
really blown away and thrilled. So yeah, one of my passions is I want to educate people and empower people, and not only just let them know about functional medicine, but to give them as a certified creation coach, give them some different tools that they perhaps have never seen or used to start creating change. I mean, I know that as a nurse practitioner, trained with prescriptive license, I could send you out the door and say, here's my prescription, go home and do this. But it doesn't happen because we need to understand how to implement that in our lives and create the change. And often we write our New Year's goals, right? We're just dealing like with the iceberg, right at the top. Well, here's my huge big goal, but we don't have what is my bare minimum. One of the things I've had people come back and say over and over again, a favorite part of the book was I had talked about a concept called floors and ceilings. What is your 1 minute version of this big goal? You want to exercise this much? This is my perfect version that I want to do. Well, life happens. What's your 1 minute goal that you can do every day to say to stay consistent instead of beating yourself up? Or,
Mm,
oh, I ate that cookie, so now let me eat the whole box. Like, wait, let's deal with here's my goal, right? And here's the 1 minute version. If you can do that, start there and then start moving up there. Um, but I also, help people to see that that spiritual vision of your future self is really critically important. What do you want your life to look like? Right? And healing even some of the abuse, if you will, the disrespect, the gaslighting, the dismissal that we get in healthcare by, first of all, healing that. And I give them specific tools, clearing tools and things to do that with, and exercises. And my new companion workbook that was just released has goes into depth on all of this, how to take the concepts and the principles of healing your body that are in my first book, Create the Vitality You Crave, right? Epigenetics 101 to heal you, to Epigenetics 101 to unlock your healing power. Like that's the point. But so we get the concepts, but when you want to implement them in your lives and you can't afford a private coach, I've got this workbook that goes through specifically and teaches you with different exercises for all adult, 8 adult learning styles, activities for you to do and start implementing. And it could take a year, right? To start implementing all of these things. into your life. Like take one thing at a time and gradually do that. Um, so that's what I really am focused on is helping people understand the power that they have and move forward in that. Um, so getting my books out there, I've got another book coming out in the fall called Perimenopausal, like with a question mark, perimenopausal, hormone balance for younger women, because we're now seeing research as early as this February, a study of US women that showed that 25% of the 30 to 35-year-olds were experiencing perimenopausal symptoms.
Oh. Why do you
Yes.
think that is?
I
Why do you
think
think it's so early?
because of all the toxins in our environment, we are bombarded with them, right? When you've got that many chemicals every day bombarding, our nutrition is poor. We're not getting enough phytonutrients to support hormones and hormone detoxification. You know, um, People are drinking, right? Every time you have a glass of alcohol, you're now demanding that your liver detox the alcohol, not the toxic estrogens. And women don't do that, right? The stress that we're under. But I think most of it is the environmental toxins and the food toxins that we are absorbing and the toxins in our personal care products.
Do you
If
think
I had my way, I would go perhaps the Supreme Court and say, we need to ban Bath and Body Works. Yeah. Like all of these
right?
products that we're giving to our teenage girls.
Right?
Right? We're seeing 8-year-olds now with, breasts, budding breasts, it's like and starting cycles at 8 and 10 years old. This is all from too much estrogen, and it's
Mm,
toxic estrogens. It's not God-given estrogen, it's toxic estrogens.
right. Do you think birth control plays a role?
Oh, I certainly do. I've seen clients that were a mess. I love the book All About the Pill. It's called The Pill, I think. And, I don't recall her name right now. She goes into a lot of detail on the, post-birth control syndrome and what the pill is doing. And I've seen clients, right, whose health was a mess, and again, on 7 meds, 3 anxiolytics, 4 antidepressants, couldn't lose weight, had no libido, couldn't even hold and these were mid-level executives, couldn't hold meetings with their teams for 2 weeks during out of the month because of
Wow.
because of the symptoms they were experiencing. Got her off the pill, right? And many of them off the pill, starting to nourish their body, detox those toxins, nourish and improve the function at the cellular level. One of them, her husband sent a text message and said, "You deserve a gold medal. I got my wife back, right?" And her libido was back. And so, yes, I think the pill contributes significantly. It is synthetic estrogens, right? Synthetic hormones that are causing problems.
Mm, I agree.
Yeah.
All right. So we are kind of coming to our end here, and I like to end the podcast with what's a piece of advice that you would give our listeners to love their lives and themselves even more?
Oh, I would say, first of all, listen to your intuition
Mm.
and realize that self-care is way more than getting a mani-pedi or right? That we do need to take time for meditation and self-care and quiet time and nurturing time to decrease the stress, right? We do need to take time to look at the relationships in our lives and see if there's toxic relationships that we need to detox as well. That detoxing should be a lifestyle, and that includes, on a daily basis, getting rid of the toxins in our diet and our personal care. And I would encourage, I guess my biggest message is you have way more control than you've ever been told. Start
Hmm.
your power. I went through 7 years of recovery work, right? 12-step recovery work, and really getting like owning your power, right? I want women to own their power. Like, this is your body, your God given body. Listen and start treating it like it's your heaven for your spirit and treat it that way. That I think would be my biggest message, that we need to take care of our bodies and that our bodies, like our physiology, impacts our psychology. Physiology impacts our spirituality, right? That we need to really be careful of how we treat our bodies.
Love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Where can listeners learn more about your book, your quizzes, ebooks, coaching? Where can they connect with you best?
And of course, go to Amazon and find my books there under Lori Finlay. They can go to createthevitalityyoucrave.com / right, coaching dash resources, and find some incredible tools there for reducing your stress, clearing, negative emotions, and empowering yourself on a daily basis. On my website, lorifinlay.com, there's free hormone quizzes that they can check. Do I possibly have estrogen dominance, which is
Mm,
one of the most common hormonal imbalances? So again, Amazon, you can go to my website, lorifinlay.com. You can go to createthevitalityyoucrave.com, and there's resources there as well.
Thank you. And we'll also have all those in the show notes too. So don't worry about memorizing that. Thank you so much, Lori. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm so thrilled that there are women out there like you, much younger, that have more years ahead of me than me, right? That are out there spreading the same message and empowering women and helping women realize that they can heal their bodies.
Love that.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your work. Okay.
Thank you.
You bet.
I appreciate that.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in to Love Your Life and Yourself. I hope today's episode gave you one more tool or one more truth to help you thrive in your health, happiness, and resilience. Remember, loving yourself isn't selfish, it's leadership. And it's the foundation for building a life that actually feels like yours. If this spoke to you, hit that follow button, leave a review, and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. And if you want to dive even deeper, grab a copy of my #1 best-selling book, Love Your Life and Yourself. It's the heart behind this podcast, and it's helped thousands of women step into a life they actually love. You can find it at drashleyrath.com or through the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care of you and keep choosing to love your life and yourself.